this vegetation grows within our Arctic molasses where we're going to go. Now this is basically ancient rainforest. It's also the rainforest which once covered the landscape here. Over a period of time that rainforest dried out, died out, and also was burnt out, and now only lives in these little pockets in the national park. Now when we go into this one over here, we'll see some of these broadleaf poplar trees, the Brachychiton australis. They live in these areas we're going into because this holds more moisture than what the savanna does. Same with the fig trees and all the vines and thickets that you'll see down there today. Now little Marie rock wallaby, she's probably well hidden this morning with all these visitors coming through, but she does have little nooks and crannies that she hides in down there. She's got a nice canopy across the top of her to keep her safe from all these predatory birds that fly around, and it's a really good environment down there for her. Brush turkeys, there is a couple about. I haven't seen them for a couple of days. There is an old mound down there which I will show you. It hasn't been worked on for a while. It's perfect conditions for our brush turkeys down there as well. And the snakes, won't see those this morning. They are basically nocturnal, the spotted python and the brown tree snake. But we will see a few bats in our gorge tubes this morning as well. So this is a completely different environment to what we have out up here, and very pristine, and hopefully we can keep it that way for many years. So let's head up the track here. You will see why we don't let people wander around by themselves down there very shortly. Okay, now just before we duck down the boardwalk, we'll let some of these people get out so it's not so crowded down there. We do have those two rocks within the area, our granite. This is decomposed granite that you can see, it has been broken down. That powder that dust is the potassium feldspar that gives it the colour, plus the glue that holds it rock together. Now I did say there's no souveniring allowed in the national park, but I'm sure you'll take some of this home when you do. Potassium feldspar, remember that. And of course the crystals are the national part of the name. Now this is that vesicular basalt I was talking about just before we pulled up. That top layer, all these little bubbles in it, those gases that are trapped when that top layer is solidified. Now when this breaks down, you get a nice rich dark soil. And basically all you need to do with this soil is add water and you can just about grow anything in it. And the results are out here. You know, this is what happens over the wet season. The grasses grow, the saplings pop up, the trees look nice and fresh, and you know, it's all due to our wet season and our beautiful soil, our rich soil here. Don't join our group. You might end up somewhere you don't know.
That's right, good for us.
Very true.
So at the end of the dry season, this is all like cut back.
No, we do burn. No, we'll talk about it during the program later on. So yeah, so this out here, the dry savanna woodland loves fire. It needs fire to stay healthy. Over here though, different situations. This used to live out here over a period of time, dried out, and now only survives. And you can imagine during June, July, August out here, it is very dry. Even these thickets become very dry as well. If a fire got in there then, it would actually wipe out everything in there. Probably our bottle trees and our fig trees will remain. But, you know, give it a while. The savanna seeds blowing in there, you know, these vines and thickets are gone. Sun's drying out the moisture. Savanna seeds are blowing in. It wouldn't take long for the savanna to take over and, you know, not realise that this vegetation used to actually live within the area here. So hopefully with our control burns, and I will talk about them later on, we can keep this safe from fire for a long time into the future. Which area is this now? This is this tube. This is the arch. That's what Stevenson. Yeah.
That's what I was thinking, because the other one first is.
Yeah, okay. Oh, you went to Collins first. Okay. So, yeah, our bottle tree here, one of many we do have through the area here, all shapes and sizes and ages. I'd say this fellow's around about 300 years old. And at the moment, not a bad head of foliage. He is starting to turn a little. Within a month or so, probably not even that long, he'll just lose all that leaf. If you get one big tree of branches up there, around about October, you'll come in with a tiny little white flower, and then of course the process starts all over. So the bottle tree, broadleaf bottle tree, Brachychiton australis, not to be confused with your boabs in Western Australia. Not even within the same species. That actually, the boab is his own species. Nobody else. This fellow's got about 13, 14 other relations to Brachychiton. There's a courage tree just at the front here, hard to see amongst all the other greenery. Here's a brachyphyton, he raises from the bottom. The Illawarra flame tree is a brachyphyton, he raises this fella. And of course you narrow their top creek, you get down to the moon and those areas, so all related. Plus a few other real local stuff. So quite a feature if you enter on this
Doesn't matter if you get the back of our heads on.
Yeah, no.
So just at the end of the deck here, there is another bottle tree. This guy I think's a bit older. He's had a few branches break off him over the years, as you see up the top there. And he's also got a big dry rot section in the side of him here, which could well be the demise of this tree. So with the timber structure inside is very fibrous and very moist. So that bit of dry rot there will probably be the end of that tree. We'll probably kill that tree sooner or later. And we do get tail ends of cyclones through here from time to time because the ground's wet, and often these trees do topple over just with that wind because they do have a big head of foliage at that time of year too. So could well be the end of that tree, that big section of dry rot.
He lays the eggs and buggers off. He goes from there.
All these are spider webs you see. So we have lots of these little webs through the base, through the branches, in the twigs. We call them the basket weed and stuff. Fine web, tiny little spider, and basically everything falls into his web. He gets rid of what he doesn't want and keeps what he does. He lives in a little rolled up leaf within the web there. As you can see, lots come through, and we'll see more of them as we go through the catwalk. So let's go down to the south first.
Yeah, they're the ones we're seeing.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah, all there. Wow. Don't think I'll need my sunglasses.
Hey?
Don't think I'm going to need my sunglasses.
Of course it's not hot, right?
No. I'll have to probably put those in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, look at this one.
Wow.
Yeah.
You can take some pictures with the phone.
Wow.
That's probably a good idea. Got my phone here.
I can often come down here 4 days, 4 times a day, and still stand in order. Okay, so welcome to our first section of lava tube here. This is the arch, or the archway, and this is one of the lava tubes that still remain standing in our lava tube complex today. Now, if we turn around from where we've just come, if we were here 190,000 years ago, we would have been standing in a lava tube. We would have been standing in that red-hot river of lava that actually created these lava tubes. But what we have here today is a lava tube that has fallen down, a lava tube collapse. And if we could pick up all this rock on both sides of us here, put it all back together, we'd have a tube that runs about 25 kilometres back to here to the Undara crater, and for about 95 kilometres out here to the northwest. So the total length of this lava tube back in the day when the Undara was erupting was something like 120 kilometres long. Now the Undara itself, just a hole in the ground, that embryonic shield volcano, the lava coming to the surface is just oozing out across the countryside. And of course lava's a liquid, and it is always going to find those lowest points in the landscape. So as it's moving across the landscape, it comes across a watercourse, starts to drain into that watercourse and starts to fill that watercourse and break the banks, continuing to run down that watercourse. But when it did break its banks, that skin formed on top, and not only let the gases escape, but also insulated that flow while the lava was contained within the watercourse. Now they say the temperature of the lava when it came out of the Undara volcano was something like 1200 degrees Celsius. So when it flowed into that watercourse, it had the ability to thermally erode into the walls of the watercourse, making it wider, thermally erode into the floor of the watercourse, making it deeper. That skin on top was insulating that flow and keeping that constant temperature. So the Undara is erupting, the flow is crossing the countryside, but these lava tubes are being formed through that watercourse. Now, when the Undara stops erupting, the lava that's left behind in that tube system continues to drain out and leaves behind the lava tubes. So cooling process starts, the roof of this tube system starts to crack and contract within the cooling process. Some wasn't strong enough to remain standing, as we have here, a lava tube collapse. This one was strong enough to remain standing, as in one of 69 lava tubes that have been found within our lava tube system today. And if we pushed all those 69 pieces together, we'd only have about 6.3 kilometres of lava tube that still stands today. So the majority of it has fallen down, and probably that would have been within the early days of cooling, because they say these tubes took about 10 years to form into solid rock. Now, thermal erosion is the whole key to this, the ability to retain that temperature and burn into the walls and into the floor of this watercourse to form the tubes. Now, up here, yes, there it is. Up here on the wall, I can show you evidence of that thermal erosion. As soon as I get that back in there we go. So up here on top, we have the bubbly basalt, that top layer of the Undara block. Now, this is ground level basically. Coming down, you have a much denser rock. Now, this is much denser because this is the red hot flow. It became denser because those bubbles had escaped, and it was, under pressure, it became a very much denser rock. So from here to ground is Undara flow, 190,000 years old. Underneath we have another vesicular layer. We have a denser area. There is another vesicular layer, another denser area, and yet another one underneath. So in this wall here, there is 5 different volcanics. Undara, 190,000 years old. This one about 280,000 years old. The one below older and older. So that heat of that lava was just so intense it just cut through those previously laid down volcanics, just like a hot knife through butter to form our lava tubes. Now, if you look at the ceiling of this lava tube out in front, you will notice that it is not one big sheer piece of rock up there. There's many pieces of rock, hit, cracked, contracted. It was strong enough to remain standing. Well, this fella out here wasn't. And all this rock is basically leaning against each other to stay up there. It's called polygonal joining, leaning against each other. And this being a typical arch, we'll have a keystone up there somewhere. And if that keystone ever fell out, we'll just end up with one big pile of rock on the ground. Hopefully not this one, but sometime in the future. And probably what will be the demise of these lava tubes is rain erosion. You can see the coloration here on the walls and on the ceiling is all due to water leaching through those cracks in the ceiling during the wet season and bringing out the colorisations of the minerals in our basalts. So this is the original basalt colour here. We've got about 50% silica within our basalt. We have about 10% iron within our basalt, so this is what the brown is. And about the same, about 10% calcium carbonate in our basalts, and this is what the white is. And of course lots of other minerals as well. But this is, probably will be the result, rain erosion, coming through and leaving that coloration behind, but that water making into our water table. Let's go down underneath and have a look at what is above us here. So, as you can see up here on the ceiling, we do have all that fragmentation, those pieces of rock staying up there, highlighted over here by the iron oxides. This is the original basalt colour, and of course coming over here is the calcium. And probably around about there, it would be where the that keystone is. So, if he fell out, we'd end up with a pile of rock. But it may not happen immediately, but over a period of time. Now, as far as the collapses go within our lava tubes that we go into, and of the 69 lava tubes that have been found, national parks only allow us into 9 of those sections. There hasn't been any reports of collapses in those 9 that we've over the last 35 years since Undara Experience has been operating. But if you look on the floor over here, you will see there is a row of rock. Now, and you look up there, that is where that rock has come out of. Now, fortunately, this is not a recent occurrence. These rocks have been sitting in every photo we've seen dating back to the 1960s when the first research started. So it could have been a couple of years prior, or it could have been a couple of hundred years prior. But, you know, nothing's been recorded in the last 35 years or so of Undara experience. Now, on this board here, our map, got a bit of information here on this. Now, this is the Undara Volcanic National Park here, the outline of it. This is the Kennedy Highway running up on the top of the range. This is the Gulf Developmental Road, Savannah Way, and the Undara Road, bringing you into Undara experience. And this morning we've come down around the edge of the swamp, up over the granites and dropped into the Arch Urman complex. Now, if you follow this dark line back here, it'll take you almost back to the crater. And if you follow it out here, it'll take you way off the map up here to the northwest. Now, this dark line is that watercourse the lava flowed into to form our lava tubes. But this dark marks on the map here aren't actually lava tubes. They're the vegetation growing and the lava tube collapses. So that's what actually showed up on the map, on the aerial photo. So they say there's about 300 collapses, but only 69 lava tubes have been found within our complex here. Now, this morning we are going into the lava tubes. We're going underground if you want to see what's up on top of the ground, and there are quite a few craters up on top of the ground. You can take yourself out to this little fella here, Kalkani crater. Go out on the Undara Road about 9k or so, turn off to your right, follow those signs in, and there's you'll come to the crater. There's a car park, there's a track up the side of the crater, and you look right around, you walk right around the rim of the crater, and look out through the landscape here and see all these extinct volcanoes on the land out through the valley here. When you get around the far side of the crater, you overlook the ranger station, and looking down through here, you'll be able to see the trail of the lava tubes due to the semi-evergreen vine thicket poking up above the savanna. So you can see it, and it gives you the idea where the lava tubes are. So it's a good way to finish the Undara experience. You've seen the lava tubes, see where it all happened on top. Now over here, this mustard colour is the Undara flow. Now this is our lava tube here, 120 kilometres or so long. The flow itself though continued way out here into the Ainsley River, and this is where it ended. Now from the end of the flow back to the crater is 160 kilometres. Now this is the longest flow from a single volcano anywhere on the planet. And not only do we have that longest flow from a single volcano, we're standing in the biggest and the best preserved lava tubes on the planet as well. So that in itself is pretty special. And the word Undara is a local indigenous word, an Urman word meaning a long way. And of course that refers to the lava flow. Now this morning we have parked the bus here, we've walked down the track, we've come down underneath the semi-evergreen vine thicket, we're standing here under the arch. Now we'll just go down around the corner here into the Urman tube. We good?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Yep. There's only one drawback with these two tubes we're going to visit now and one later. There is water in them. Up there, maybe up there. But what we do is we go and have a look at these tubes, then we jump in the bus and go out to another little lava tube further on out. So, and it's a pretty little tube you see out there.
Because we didn't get back in the bus again and go somewhere else.
Mm. Yeah, I think so. Mm. Am I?
No, yeah, right.
Photos.
This is receded quite a bit. Early in the season we was up on that first pool there. So we've been up to say here. And as you see the handrail is starting to appear and it's getting, it's dropping every day. So maybe within a couple of weeks we'll be up down the back of this tube. So this is the Urman tube, and this one's been named after our local Indigenous people, the Urman. We are in their country today. We don't know a great deal of history about the Urman due to prior to the settlement of the area here. even when they were doing the research on these lava tubes, they found very little evidence that the Endurman used these lava tubes for a purpose. They did find sort of fireplaces or campsites out in some of the collapsed areas, not so much in the lava tubes, where they found like fireplaces, they found magnified bones that have been split open to get at the marrow in those bones. Also, a few spearheads and cutting implements, but that's the only indication that they actually came into these lava tube areas for any at all. Haven't found any wall art in our lava tubes, so you know that tells us very that these people were probably here during the wet season when there was water, because you know can't do much without water these days or those days, and probably again when would have been a lot of fruit and animals around to hunt and harvest. Other in the dry season, that would be more towards the west, where there is always permanent water. Our closest running water to here is Elizabeth Creek, not surprise. So from the west, you get a couple of river systems out here, but this is the only water during the wet season. This is the only water around the place. As you see, the tube does go down a little bit further. At the back of this tube, we actually stand on a moving platform, if you like, and look at a lava tube wall. A lava tube roof rather than a lava tube wall. Because this flow did exactly what the watercourse did. It went over a waterfall, it kept its tube form, and it carried on. So the next section of lava tube is called the picnic tube, and it's about 4 metres lower than what we have here. And of course, that's all been silted up over the years, got rock falling in that area that drops down and just natural dust and soil washing into the area. So it does carry on into the picnic tube, and it has water in it all year round, so it just gives you an idea of how close to the water table we are. Even the bores we used back at the Undara experience only go down about 40 metres. The water table is quite over here on the wall you will see a water line, but up above that you'll see those brown lines along the wall, and they are called lava level lines. It tells you where this flow was at different periods of time as this river of lava created these lava tubes. That flow would have been right up underneath the ceiling to start with, and as time went on, eroded down to what we have here at Hills Bay. So just that river of lava, not one big gush all the way through, just that river of lava that formed the tubes here in the forest. So big trees, and taken over this collapse here, this springwood here, you'll couple in there, and there goes.
And with noise, they sort of scatter, don't they?
And the vibration.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Hey?
Wow, that's a long way down the track. That's
Look
unreal,
at
isn't it?
change in atmosphere.
Isn't
Yeah.
it? The colour. Yeah, all the different colour.
It is a different colour.
Yeah.
It's basically, it's because of the remelt on the ceiling. You've got a
Just
different
water in
texture
there,
on the ceiling here too, which I will explain in a moment. So that atmosphere changed as we walked down the steps. Got a little bit thicker, middle
Humid,
humid, because a lot of the humidity is because of the water in this one. And then I reckon there's still at least 2 metres down the back of this tube. A lot of it's got to do with bats, but also some of it's got to do with carbon dioxide levels. Yeah. Now, at the back of this tube, underneath that archway, it opens up into another massive cavern. And coming through the ceiling are tree roots, 2 or 3 metres long, with big cow tail sort of situations off the end, you know. They're putting carbon dioxide into the atmosphere here. Normal life, no, leaves are taking the carbon dioxide out of the air, send it down the trunk, use what it needs, and then disperse what it doesn't need into the ground. Here, it disperses it into the lava tube, and often we can't get into this lava tube or down the back of this lava tube due to those high levels of carbon dioxide. And we do have a very high-tech way of checking for carbon dioxide levels. Not anymore.
No.
So just a lighter, you know. It's a lot more friendly than a canary. But yeah, good light there today. Sometimes I think, you can feel it. It's really heavy in here. I start to walk down the steps and I'll get a light about 2 centimetres above the lighter. Next, I don't get a light at all. So we turn around, do a quick talk here and leave. It's, carbon dioxide's heavier than air, so down low.
Yep.
And yeah, so don't stay in here for very long. But this lava tube is the biggest in volume within our lava tube system.
Oh no.
As you can see, this is a much wider tube and a much higher tube than any of those ones we've just come out of. And they say the reason for this being such a wide, high tube is because this flow was very slow coming through here, even to a point of being pooling up. And of course that pooling enabled that flow to thermally erode further into the walls. Even that heat coming off that pooling was starting to remelt the ceiling. That's why you have a sort of a different texture on the ceiling here. It's been remelted and solidified again. But when this flow got past whatever that obstruction was that was holding it back, it ran quite quickly down towards the arch, the pyramid, and then dropped into the picnic tube. So in general, the slower the flow, the bigger the tube, the faster the flow, the smaller the tube. And up towards the crater, the tubes up there are very tall, but very narrow. So that little bit more elevation and very faster flow. So yeah, so you've got all that coloration on the ceiling here. That arch there is what we've been told is a collapse that actually dropped but supported itself. And that we usually go right through to the back of this tube underneath that arch there during the wet, during the tours, during normal dry season. But I can't even see that handrail down the back there. So there's still a good 1.5 metres, if not more, water down through the back there. So the last decent rain we had prior to this was 21. We had quite a bit of water, not as much as this, but 2011 Cyclone Yazi, we had more than this. She came through and filled our water tubes up to at least 2 metres in depth, even through here. And yeah, big wet season for that one. That was 2011. If you Google Undara underwater, you'll come up with a video of a swimming tour that they had, and you see them standing on the rails of the pyramid, and the water's basically still up to their chest. So have a look at that, Undara underwater.
Yeah, we might be a swim tonight.
Yeah, no, not allowed to anymore.
National parks have got it.
No, but national parks had it before. It was under, we used to work for the Collins family, but, we're a separate entity to what it is now. So Discovery Parks are now have it, and of course you owners, you rules, basically.
Corporations, big corporations.
Yeah,
rules.
Well, at least they're Australian corporation, that's one good thing. And
That's
they've
very
got
good.
day parks, they've got wiki camps and some other help as well. So, yeah. So I'm not complaining, because, you have to sit down and take your boots off and your shoes off and take your phones out of your pockets and all that. But yeah, the first tour we did, I think I must have said around there, was up to our waist in 2021.
So after the space where they're going to mow, so I like to put something in. Hey?
Yeah. That breeze is nice.
Similar to bloody similar to
So not only do the birds eat them, we have a little red-headed flying fox that comes through. So we don't have that big fruit patch out here. We have a little red-headed fella about that big, and he's a little cute little guy. Feeds a lot during the daytime, so you often see him crawling through the trees, and particularly around the campsites where we have a lot of familiar bottle dogs. Red-headed flying fox, tiny little fella. This is a native grape, so it will come out in little green bunches of grape sort of fruit later on that turns purple, but they are very, very bitter, and this would have been a food source for the indigenous of the area, because they had a very different taste to us, because all our fruits need to be really nice and sweet these days, don't they? But yeah, very bitter, these little grapes on that tree. Now the tree itself is a bat-wing coral tree. So you look at the leaf and you see it looks like a little bat.
Makes sense.
Now the coral part of it is basically due to the flower that comes out later on, sort of an apricot-y, orangey, pinky coloured flower, sprays of flower, and then the seed pods develop, and then these little toxic bean type seeds are actually fall out of those. This fella is either it's a male of the species that doesn't flower, or he's not even old enough to flower yet. Usually when you see him around, if they have flowered, you'll see seeds around the bottom of them. So I was thinking it might be a male of the species. Now, the indigenous women actually used to use the bark of this tree as their little cooling, their carrying bark, because it's nice and white. It is a member of the cork family, the corkwood. So what they do is put a cut around here, cut around there, down through the middle, work that off, and then with a nice little lightweight basket. Even the bigger trees, and we do get some monstrous corkwoods through here, they use that to carry their babies with them. Now, and it wouldn't kill the tree, the bark would just grow back together with them. Now, even in the early days when the settlers came through here and all these miners going through, probably the brake pad on their wagon was a bit of hardened leather that, you know, after a while would wear out, then you get metal on wood with the brake and the wheel, and that would cause friction and cause a spark. You know, might burn your wagon down, it might even start a grass fire. So they realised that this is a cork tree. Cork doesn't burn, so they get a slab of this, put it on their brake pad, and there was a brake that caused friction to stop, but wouldn't cause a spark. So the batwing coral tree, a member of the cork family.
You walk past these places and you just don't realise, do you? Hey?
Okay, so this is the seed of the spear grass. You can see, it loves your woolly socks. It loves your mesh sneakers. You know, you get that in your sock or in your sneaker, and you pull it off. The seed stays. You know, you pull the top off. The seed stays in. And of course, that nice bit of sweat in your sock. Where'd that go? And next thing you know, it's growing into your toe. And yeah, so there you go. You can't pull that out. You've got to pull it through the other way. So yeah, so imagine back in those early days, those first pioneers, the settlers came through here. They brought sheep into this country. You imagine those sheep wandering around through the long grass, nice dewy morning, grass starting to, you know, clumps of this, because what happens when it gets wet, it actually twists all together in these big clumps. And of course, that's grass, once it gets wet, it starts to do the old, come on, twirl. There we go, the spear grass twirl. So that would start to burrow into the wool and into the flesh. Next thing you've got an infected sheep and maybe a fly blow, and poor old sheep. But they got rid of all the sheep to the miners going through the Etheridge and Palmer River goldfields, and then brought in all those sleek cattle. So, you know, solved that problem. But with us, you know, it's in your sock, it's in your shoe. You can pull it out, as I said, but it leaves the seed behind. And apparently the idea is not to wash your woolly socks with your underwear.
Oh dear.
Can we use that? And not everyone has seen this lava tube, because this is only an extension on due to the water in the arch in the Stevenson. So very special little tube, this one. Now, as you see, there's a few butterflies around. They are the common crow, and these fellas range right across the top of Australia into Indonesia and also India. So all the way across, and you can see on the walls here, there's still quite a few that haven't risen, almost coming in. And of course the mud wasps here take advantage of that wet floor and actually, you know, build their nests up there on the wall. You'll notice the thickness of the ceiling here is maybe 3-4 metres in depth, and it does get deeper because we get towards the back of the tube. And they say the average depth of a lava tube is between 5 and 20 metres. Some are thinner, some are thicker, of course. But I reckon we've got about 4 or 5 metres here, and it gets much deeper as we get towards the back of the tube. So come on down.
I need those stairs. Those stairs are awful. Oh, nice and cool in here.
Good. I don't think it's charged.
Oh,
yeah, no, it wouldn't be charged. National Parks hasn't been able to put a charge on it as yet.
Did he?
Yeah. Down this tube, you've got that almost ribbon of calcium down through there, and it looks even like a spine running down through the centre there. It looks like a rib cage, this lava tube. But this little lava tube is the only one that has permanent water in it. Now, I did say we don't have any streams in the area here. We don't have any dams that hold water. Only ever in the wet season does that on top of the ground hold water, and then it will sink into the water table. But here there is this little spring, and this was running a lot stronger than that earlier on. It has decreased, and it will come to basically a trickle as the season goes on. But it's always an amount of water coming out of that wall. Now, the fella who found this lava tube was a stockman that was camped out overnight, not far from here, and his horse was missing the next morning when he got up, and he found his horse down at this spring drinking. So they scrambled down the rock and was at this water hole, this spring. And then this became a stopping point to replenish water supplies for those travellers going from, up north from Herberton down to Ewington on that track, and even moving out through the west. So a water supply, and apparently there was a campground up on top there somewhere as well. So our only source of water, running water within the national park here. Now over here on the floor, you will see all these indents. I have had people suggest that, are they dinosaurs? Well, no, they're not dinosaurs. They're not actually any animal print at all. What they've been formed by is water leaching through the ceiling during the wet season. Hitting the same place day after day, year after year, century after century, basically forming these drip zones through here. And even to look at that floor, it looks as if you'd sink into it if you stood on it. It is very, very firm. If anything, it would be slippery. Just to give you an idea how firm it is, there is Wallaroo poo there, and there's no sign of a Wallaroo track coming through. So you don't sink into it? Sorry? It doesn't sink in. No, doesn't even make a mark, because that's only been there for 3-4 days or so. And if it would have left a track if it had been muddy. So Wallaroo's no problem coming down these rocks. We often spring them down here of a morning, coming down for a drink or just out of the heat of the day. And I often spring a kookaburra, having a bath there of a morning too.
Cool.
Sitting on the edge, shaking off.
You get snakes in here as well?
Well, I have seen a brown tree snake.
Okay.
Yeah, but they're non-venomous as far as we're concerned.
No, yeah.
Yeah, we're going to go down there right now for this. Okay, let's sit on down there.
It's unreal, all right. It's incredible, isn't it? You're plentiful water for animals, isn't it? plentiful for water for animals.